I'm here with Momin today. I've come to visit him in the UAE, and we're going to talk a little bit about his journey of OCD recovery. So, when Momin first came into me, he was in Lahore, he was living with his parents. He was trapped pretty much nearly in one room of the house with contamination OCD. Although he left the house, he was very much still confined. But why don't you take us a bit back to that point, Momin, of just talking about when you first came into me, when you first found me, and we started working together, what that was like, how bad you were, and the situation.
It was pretty bad, and I was doing my one-to-one calls also from my bed. I was attending the webinars from my bed as well. And I think that if you could look at me just sitting in my bed doing those calls, it would be very reflective of how stuck I was. I couldn't even like walk around or like touch anything or sit anywhere else. It was very confined to just my bed, essentially. Um, and I think I was listening to all this information coming in, and it made a lot of sense, and it felt really good. But also, it just I mean, in my mind, I kept thinking, will this even apply to me, and will I be able to get out of this?
I'm accepting that truck in the background going along with a whistling sound, the
Yeah.
same as I accepted my tinnitus, because if I had filmed this
Yeah.
in the day, there'd be too many people here. So this is the best shot I've got.
Essentially, yeah, yeah. No, but so that was me. That was the start of the journey itself.
We've got a lot of machines. Now there is another truck coming along to fix a light or something.
We can
So
pause this
your,
as
your
well.
tinnitus definitely hasn't got worse. It's definitely not your tinnitus. It's the unfortunately this machine that's going along there. So we'll go back to Momin whilst once we've got rid of this. But good exposure to listen to this annoying thing going past.
I already have tinnitus, by the way.
Yeah, well, now you've got worse. Now you've got
Yeah.
worse tinnitus. Go on, Momin.
I think I was still feeling pretty hopeless because I think, despite coming in for phone calls and stuff, I felt like I couldn't do anything still. I didn't feel the motivation. I didn't feel the drive. I didn't feel the passion. Um, I didn't see how any of the concepts around acceptance could apply to me because I found my fears to be so believable, and I was so. It felt, as people also say, like it was very ingrained in me that I would be stuck. Um, so yeah, I mean, I was doing things where I was like, yeah, but it's not going to go anywhere. That was my state of mind essentially.
And when you were at your worst, how bad did it feel? How bad did you get?
I think it. I mean, I got really bad in the sense of like your basics in life, which is like spending time with family and spending time with friends, doing things that you enjoy. Everything stopped. It was phone and laptop and my bed. Those were literally the three things I had in my life. That is all I had. And for I would say a good 4 or 5 years, that's how I spent my life, and I spent my entire days.
How much time do you think you were spending in bed during a 24-hour period? 19 hours?
17, 18 hours.
Which is basically the worst life structure for OCD. You definitely do not want to be spending that many hours in bed.
Yeah, 16, 17 hours easily. And then some of those were also just like in the bathroom, washing my hands and like counting up to 100. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Then it's like, okay, wait, was this 3 or was this 4? Okay, maybe I'll do it one extra just in case. So then I was like washing my hands in the bathroom just like over and over again. And especially like, for example, in the winter time, I couldn't use all the hot water because other people in the house needed hot water as well. So it would be freezing cold water, and I'd just be washing my hands. And by the time I would walk out of the bathroom, my hands would be like freezing cold. My bones would be hurting because it would be under the water for that long. My skin was kind of like getting roughed up because of how much soap I was using, and it was pretty bad. And I was going to bed just completely zapped out. Like my head would be so full of anxiety all the time that It 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 would feel blank. I would feel numb, little like emotional numbness.
And
Nothing at all.
when you first got help in Pakistan, like therapy there, what's that like for OCD?
So there was no help, literally no help for OCD. It was the only good form of therapy available was your conventional psychodynamic trauma therapy, and that's what I used for just like life in general.
You did a lot of inner child work. I remember you saying that
A lot
at the
of inner-
time.
yeah.
And the compulsive sort of mental lock you got yourself into with the inner child
Oh,
work.
100%. I just thought that all the answers to my anxiety were in the incidents and all my life that happened up till 15 years. So from the age of 5 till 15, 16, I was just like analyzing my life over and over and over again. So there was a lot of like, yeah, I mean, inner child work, trauma work, like your family relationship dynamic kind of work. It was all of that, and that gave me like a lot of good insights about life and myself and my relationships. But because it became extremely compulsive very quickly, on the OCD front, it started making me feel far, far worse.
You see it so much. People always say that to me. They're like,
Yeah.
well, Rob, what if I've got trauma? What if I've got PTSD? It's like, yeah, but it's still from the beliefs. It's
Yeah.
still your perspectives that catastrophize. I mean, I've worked with so many people with PTSD from all different situations over the years, hundreds and hundreds, and it's always the catastrophized relating to the death, the health, the loss of control. There's something there. And that becomes such a big problem.
And I never got PTSD diagnosed, but like I'm quite sure that if I went for like a formal kind of like diagnosis of it, I would have been to quite a degree like diagnosed with PTSD as well, because it was a lot of the past, and I had like a list of like traumatic events that happened like in a span of a few years, and I would get like flashbacks and just like randomly get super triggered by things and just feel back I was in that old place and all that kind of stuff. So I'm pretty sure I had that, or even if
So
it wasn't.
confusing though with trauma
Yeah.
stuff, because you think that because there was such a strong reaction, that means that because that was there, that's the thing keeping you stuck today. Because
Yeah.
you someone say like, is there anything in your life that gave you a really strong anxious reaction? Oh my god, that. Well, how do you feel about that? It gives me so much anxiety. Oh, that's where it all stemmed from. We need to revisit that. We need 100 sessions revisiting exactly why that
Yeah.
thing was the issue, and becomes a big problem.
And because it's a real event, then it feels justified to be able to like have to analyze it over and over again. It feels like a legitimate reason and excuse to link all your current problems, OCD, anxiety, triggers, whatever, back to those traumatic events. And that's essentially what I was doing for such a long time.
Key points. We're
Yeah.
going to carry the rest of this on walking for the next section, so we'll be back in 1 second. And this is the nightmare we have here, because I've come to film the rest of this very important segment, and Kat has come along and distracted Momin.
Yeah.
Right.
Hates me.
Stand here, actually, Momin. Light's good. So, what we were going to talk about was
Yeah.
with your situation
Yeah.
now, when you're not living at home in your family house
Yeah.
and you're over here, what did you notice as the first freedoms that you experienced looking back at how bad you were with OCD in the past?
I think like it's a funny thing to say, because I think usually when you think about first freedoms, you think of like really big grand things that I was able to achieve this and that and whatever. But I think just being able to walk around my room, being like, okay, turn the light switch on, sit on a table, sit on the couch, open a book, walking barefoot in my
Well,
room.
light switch is a big problem for you in the past.
Oh, I mean, yeah. Essentially, like I had a piece of tissue paper that was always there in a corner, because I also felt guilty about wasting tissue paper every time I had to turn the light switches on or off. So I would just pick that piece of paper up, of that tissue paper up, turn the light switch on or off, and then put it back. So I think for me, even just that little act of turning the light switch on without compulsions,
I know it's
um,
like, I used
and
to have,
touching things around my house.
I used to have the
yeah.
light switch one so bad. I used to link it to everything. And I used to check them constantly. And
Yeah.
even when I was young, waking up in the night to check they were off, then thinking that water had got on the light switch, connected some electrical thing, especially in the bathroom. And then it became so bad
Yeah.
that at one point I was taking hours and hours to get out of the house, especially with the lock in the door. What happens if the house got burgled? But then when I moved into my own house, I thought if it got burgled, it's my responsibility. But it was the harm OCD that was latched to my family. What happens if their house gets robbed? What happens if their stuff gets stolen? What happens if there's a fire and they burn to death? I can't live with myself. That happened. That's where it got in, and
Yeah.
so much of the harm elements. It moved from the stuff from me to them, and that's how sneaky it is, and
Yeah.
it tries to come from any angle.
And I think that, I mean, when we're thinking about recovery, I think people are thinking that, oh, I'll recover and I'll be able to do like life will be mine. And yes, sure, but you have to be able to start with like a very small step. And I think it seems so basic and mundane, and it almost sounds like nothing. But that to me, like I just remember just absolutely being like thankful that I was able to just walk around my room barefoot and being able to touch things, and that's all. Literally, that's all. So that was, I mean, when you talk about freedom, that's what comes to my mind, like the very first thing. But that then snowballed into me becoming more and more independent in my life. Like
And that's the freedom.
That's
That's
the
what it's
freedom.
all about.
like
Mommy, we'll do this next section walking along here.
Yeah.
Just so I don't have to stand with a series of cats behind coming towards us. So we'll carry on in a second. So where were we? We were talking about an interesting topic of,
We were talking
of
about-
light switches, which
Yeah.
for anyone who sees me
Yeah.
walking along here, filming Mom in talking about light switches, first of all, they probably think, oh my God, it's some annoying influencers filming content. And then on top of that, they'll think, no, it's very strange content they're making, talking about light switch anxiety. And oh, look, two cats right
we
there.
interrupt this program.
We interrupt
to-
this broadcast to bring you this. Now, if we weren't filming this, Momin's hobby in life is
going to
meeting
meet cats.
cats. We went the other day. I took Mom into a cat cafe, as you probably saw on Instagram. I'm also a fan of cats. Not quite as much as Momin, but a lot. Now,
yeah.
Momin, let's go back to that conversation of those things in relation to contamination
Yeah.
OCD.
So I
When
think
you were in
one
that meant, go on.
Yeah.
Go on.
No, so I was just going to also point out very quickly as well. I think that it's also then the little moments of and little things that you start getting independent on and you start taking back in your life. So I think like driving a car, for example, right? So I mean, driving a car was an exposure that I had to do because I had stopped driving at all. But just by doing that exposure and driving regularly, it added that independence factor because then I didn't have to think about how much money I was spending on Ubers every month. I did not have to wait for anyone else to pick me or drop me anymore. So I could then essentially like go wherever I wanted, whenever I wanted. And I think like just being able to regain that personal freedom just with driving was like a huge thing for me. And it also just made me feel really good in myself. I mean, I started, if I really think about it, I started driving regularly again after recovering at the age of 28. That's pretty late.
Well, considering you're now like 52, yeah, it's pretty
Yeah,
late.
essentially. So and I think like it's very easy to also get like be really hard on yourself as well, to be like, oh, I'm 28 and like I still haven't driven, or like, you know, or I started
I
driving
remember
late,
that
but-
point. You were avoiding driving altogether.
Oh,
Yeah.
100%.
And I kept
spent-
trying to bring it up and saying you need to do this exposure, and you were like, that one's a 10, that's too high on the list.
Yeah.
No way, forget it. We've got so many others. Come on, Rob, let's go back to some stuff that I could do that's more easy. And then you kept
Yeah.
trying to drag me to that. And I kept saying to you, no, you need to go into the room in your house that you don't go to, and those kinds of things. And you were just trying to get away from that all the time, because that to you was like, no, that's a 10. And you kept screaming at me, no, there's others, Rob. And that's what happens. People get angry with OCD, and then they try and control the situation. And like, Rob, I think you've got this wrong. I think we need to start here. And for some people with contamination OCD especially, they want to move in such small increments, they never recover.
Yeah.
Because the increments are too small. I used to see that all the time with housebound cases.
Yeah, and I think like people also don't realize that. Think about it, like from my very first phone call that I had with Rob, it was 2 to 3 years later that I actually did the exposures that Rob said I had to do in the first call. 2 to 3 years, right? So a lot of people who are coming in with calls with us now, and within like the first like one
Yeah,
or 2
feel
months.
sorry for me here,
Yeah.
guys. Think of that, right?
Yeah.
My job, having to put up with these OCD guys, putting off exposures for that long.
And it
I mean,
was
I don't
really
normally let them
frustrating.
get away with that, but he didn't come in for sessions very often, so I didn't really get a choice. He's
And
just
al-
a particularly annoying character to work with.
No, and also it's also then the
Oh no.
another one. She doesn't
Let's
care.
see Momin's trustworthiness. Stand there and see if you can get that cat to come to you. If it doesn't, you're not a very trustworthy person. And I definitely, that is terrible. You see that?
Fear of rejection, just
That
a shame
means
attack.
all your OCD fears are true.
Yep.
That means all your harm things, you definitely are the serial killer, 100%.
So I think like people don't really realize how long it also took us to recover and how frustrating we were ourselves when we were suffering with OCD. Like I can and by the way, this also happened. True story. Whenever I would speak to Rob and whenever I would say I haven't done my exposures, because again, like with contamination OCD especially, exposures like are a huge part of the recovery journey.
I'm sorry for the camera angles today. I'm not an official camera person. As you probably saw in my last video, I hurt my shoulder as well. So you're getting a very amateur job here, but we've got a good speaker here of Momin, so we're going to be all right.
We can make do. So it was so I was putting off my exposures over and over again, and then whenever I would say to Rob that I have not done my exposures, on top of that, I would also feel shit about myself as well. I was like, I'm wasting this person's time because he's saying the same
I'm glad he
thing
thinks
to
of that
me.
now, after all this time. You definitely didn't think that then.
Yeah.
The time then, you got a kick out of doing that.
Basically. So I felt bad as well, and I think that added another layer as well of demotivation in like working on recovery itself, because I was like, I'm really bad at this. I'm not good at this thing, at this recovery thing. So what's the point in trying to work on anything?
Can you
at
come
all?
over here and sit on something here? Because that'd be easier for me to film you than walking backwards. Yeah, you can sit on that pole there. Perfect. So, yeah, that's interesting when you look back at it. It's easy on reflection to review things and
Yeah.
look at them differently. But when you're actually going through it, it's very hard to think of it in those ways. Because when you're so caught in it, you're just thinking of, I need freedom and to keep away from that worst exposure and that thing that's going to
Yeah.
induce so much adrenaline and anxiety at the time.
And I think because of how like hard our own journeys were for us as well, like when people are coming in and they're feeling really hopeless and stuck, I can very clearly see the path for them and I can see the hope for them, because it's very obvious to me why they're stuck and what needs to change. But I mean, of course, I also understand that I cannot like make them see what I see right now, and I cannot make them believe what I believe in them, and that's something that they'll have to learn.
You
through
see
quite
that
a
with
lot
the
of
particularly
experience.
severe cases as well. Like
Yeah.
I've worked one-on-one with you with some of the most severe cases on the planet. And when you've got somebody who's in like one room, unable to leave it, they've got plates and drinks, hundreds of bottles all over the room.
Yeah.
And you're saying like, you've got to take an exposure of just taking a step over there near just like anything that's mentally contaminated in their head.
Yeah.
And they don't want to do it. And then
And-
it makes it very difficult.
And with contamination OCD, I spoke about this in another video the other day as well, that I think one of the challenges with contamination is that it's connected to everything else. Like one action, one exposure is then also connected to like a chain of actions with other things. So if I'm holding this bottle, for example, and this is contaminated for me, so but then it's not just about, okay, I'll do the exposure of holding this bottle and and touch it, but then it's also about, okay, now I've done that, but now I cannot touch my glasses. So I have to then, should I also then touch my glasses? No, but that's exposure number
Yeah, and for
two.
example, if you drop that bottle on the grass behind you
Yeah.
and then you drank from it, you'd think, oh my God, what happens if a cat urinated there and then that gave me a
Basically,
disease,
and-
and then somebody else then accidentally saw the bottle, when I leave it in my house, they
Yeah.
drink from it, then they get a disease,
And then
and then
it's-
I've spread it, and then the
Yeah.
harm OCD element, it can come from a
And
many...
even like if I put myself back in that spot when I was of like analyzing, like, okay, now I've touched this water bottle, but then I'm like, okay, now I can't touch my clothes though, because if I touch my clothes and then I go home, then my bed will be contaminated if I sit in it, and that's another exposure. So just this one thing feels like it like then connects to everything else, and that's why even taking that first step is so difficult, because it feels like
First
it's
step's
going
everything.
to, yeah.
First step is everything.
And fear of being overwhelmed is like, that's why fear of being overwhelmed is like a huge one with contamination, because the overwhelmingness that comes with contamination spreading is like the biggest fear that comes with it.
We're just talking about contamination OCD. Now we're going to talk a little bit about how you feel today. And we've come somewhere with a bit bright lighting at night, a dog park, which would maybe actually be a triggering place for someone with contamination OCD back in the past, especially with anything to do with disease, germs, getting on your shoes, then into the house, then harm OCD, kill it back, getting onto someone,
I actually
all
know
those things.
a couple of people who stay away from animals because they have like a contamination fear over there for sure. I think like,
Which we definitely don't do with the number of cats that we've come across in these videos.
essentially, I just kind of like got scratched. Oh, there's a slight bit of blood. I just got scratched.
That's a massive
there.
fear for people, you know?
Yeah, it is.
Because people fear getting cat scratch disease,
Yeah.
and so then they'd be like, oh my God, I need to get to the hospital tomorrow. Like rabies is a fear.
Yeah.
Some people like rabies because the way they jump to is 0 to 100 is like, yeah, but if you get bitten straight away, that can be instant death.
Yeah.
And I can't accept that, Rob. I can't make peace with that. And they get so scared, you know?
I think also what I was also going to say earlier about contamination was, and just and I think this goes for every theme as well, which is the fear of being overwhelmed and the fear of being tired and exhausted. I think that's a huge one, and that was a huge one for me that kept me extremely demotivated as well, because I did not want to do anything that would make me feel like I had to exert myself, and that was a bit too tiring for me, or just a bit much on my nerves. And that's also why it felt so impossible to do even like the tiniest task ever. And like, very well how much I was just trying to, like, I used to not want to do anything at all. Like sitting with people and socializing is something that I absolutely love. Like I love like having to sit down with people and just talking to them for hours. But I could barely get through 10 to 15 minutes sitting with someone, because I used to take small breaks. I used to go to my room, I used to take a break, have a breather for like 10-15 minutes, and then go back out with socializing. And that happened so many times when I had guests over in my house. I would go for frequent breaks to my room. At times I would go to my bathroom just to sit in there, like in the people.
Yeah, because you're trying to escape by changing the external environment.
Essentially.
And you don't have to do that now. Obviously, in a position of recovery, you don't think like that. But like, if you think of your life today, I mean, you work with a huge number of people. You're one of the people that works with the most number of people with OCD and anxiety in the world. And if you look at your situation and how you feel on a day-to-day when you're really busy and you're hearing all these different stories of different people with anxiety and OCD from around the world, people often say, but doesn't that trigger you, hearing all the different thoughts?
No, not at all. And it's a strange thing, because I don't even know how to explain, because I think like once you're in it, then you're able to really like know it from experience. Is that I'm not even thinking while I'm on a call, or while I'm on my third or fourth call of the day. I'm not even thinking, am I tired or not? It's more of a, once I'm done with my day, it's like, oh, yeah, today was a bit tiring maybe. I mean, of course, like I do think that, but like it's not an evaluation of like, okay, after 1 hour, am I tired? Okay, today I had to do this much. Am I tired now? Like,
How does it feel in your mind today, in a position of recovery? What does that feel like in your mind?
I think the best way to put it is how you also say it, is not feeling locked in. I don't feel like I have to analyze every single feeling, emotion, symptom, sensation in my body. I don't have to evaluate every single action and situation based off of like, was this good for me or was this bad for me? Was this triggering or was this not triggering? Was this tiring or not? Was this reminiscent of the past or not? Am I feeling some kind of like sadness or anger or frustration or inner depression that I have to like kind of like root out? That was a big one for me as well. I'm not going through cycles of like multiple cycles of evaluation throughout my day. That's the best way I can put it.
The mental rumination's gone because there's no fear driving the cycle.
100%. Like I'm not even thinking about those things, and it's more so like it's not that I've lost any ability to be reflective about my life. I do obviously.
Yeah, like I
reflect on my
reflect
life,
making this
evaluate.
video. Did I say this question? Should I ask this question? But you're not doing it in an anxious way. You're doing it in a way thinking forward of how to make the best video
Exactly. And
in terms
I'm
of
also,
content for OCD.
And I'm also okay with like if this doesn't turn out well either. Like,
It definitely
there's a
won't
comfort
turn out well. The fact you're in it, you know,
Yeah,
that's
and
a disaster for me
there's
from
a-
day one.
There's a comfort in it. There's an ease in it, and it's like we'll just go with the flow and see what happens. If there are pros that happen, we'll take that, and if there are cons, we'll just improve on that.
And on that point of go with the flow, we're gonna go.